pod bay doors, please, Hal.
The pod bay doors are slightly open. Welcome to one of our mini episodes, our infrequent mini episodes. We do that on purpose. It's not laziness. I'm your host, Doug Heller, film critic and film historian for TalkMovieToMe.com, here as always with my good friend and film critic, Jerry Dean Roberts, film critic for ArmchairCinema.com, ArmchairOscars.com, and OverThinkingOscars.wordpress.com. What do we got to talk about today, Jerry?
This show has too much Wesley. And by that I mean all the Wesley.
So, you've been taking a little trek through the stars lately, haven't you?
This is what I do. I don't know. I never know when I'm going to binge. I literally go through Amazon Prime or Netflix or what have you, and I'll pick something and I'll just watch it. And it could be and it could not be. And based around the what?
I have to stop myself from binging because
you have a life?
If I do that, well, yeah, and I want to watch movies.
Oh, same here.
I have to stop myself because I've gone so hardcore. I work at home, and a couple years ago, I watched all 7 seasons of Parks and Recreation in under a fortnight.
Are those 30 minutes or are they an hour?
22 minutes.
22 minutes. See, 22 minutes is a little easier. It's a little easier.
It's a little easier, but 7 years of 22 episodes or 25 episodes in less than 2 weeks, I think it was like 12 or 13 days, that's too much.
That's a lot.
I did the same thing with Community, but in half the time.
Well, I binge, but I'm not a person who sits down on the couch and watches the show for several hours. When I binge, I'm a lot of times I'm watching sideways. I'm watching it while I'm doing other things.
Yeah. If it's something that I know, that's how I'll watch it. But if it's new to me, nope. I'll just sit there and watch it.
Well, if you know this show, a year ago we had a lot of fun. We did a month of all the Star Trek movies. And I finally got access to CBS Access. And I got to see Discovery.
Which is so good.
And I got on this, sometimes when you binge something and it ends, and you want more.
And you feel so empty.
I do. So I noticed that Netflix had Star Trek The Next Generation. And it was coupled with the fact that I'm excited about Picard, the new show coming up next spring. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll just take a look at Encounter at Farpoint. And, we didn't have anything to watch, and I just put on Encounter at Farpoint. And the next thing you know, I'm in the middle of season 2. And now, I watched Star Trek The Next Generation which is what we're talking about. I watched Star Trek The Next Generation in its first run. But only in its first run. Not because I didn't like it, but just a lot of drama shows I don't go back to.
See, my relationship with this, I got into The Next Generation through reruns, but it was while it was in its last season. But I didn't watch the last season actively as it aired. Right. So, and then, Generations came out that same year, and I was getting hooked on it, and I'd watched probably most of every episode.
Yeah.
Most every episode. A few years ago, I decided to go from stem to stern. I started at the first episode of Star Trek, the original series. Went through that.
And you've seen every
series,
episode of every Star Trek show.
The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and we watched Discovery as it came out week by week. So yes, I have seen every single episode of every single Star Trek series.
Which is kind of what I'm
doing.
which is
Mm-hmm.
kind of what I'm doing. I'm going to see. I'll see how much interest, because I was never a fan of Deep Space Nine. Um,
You have to give that another
but
chance. I wasn't initially, and until Worf came on,
mm,
but when I went back and rewatched the first three seasons and actually paid attention to them, they're actually quite good.
well, what I want to talk about is what I've seen so far. Like I said, now this is a weird thing that happens. This is the weird way the brain works. Um, I don't remember 99% of these episodes, but I'm aware of all of them.
Right,
Um,
right. Well,
but
you've had it's a hard knock trying to get through the first two seasons.
well, and the funny thing is that I won't remember this episode, but there will be pieces that I'm like, okay, I know what I'm looking at. I know the episode that this
Hmm.
is.
Or you'll be able to recall it if it's mentioned later.
Not only that, and I don't know if this happens to you, I can recall things that were going on in my life when I first saw the episode. And I'm sitting there going, okay,
I don't.
I remember this because I remember watching this on the day that I got my first job, or something
Mm.
like that. It's like these little flashes because I know where I
See,
was.
I don't think about that because I ended up getting involved in Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Hmm.
Uh, I was about 13 years old and went through a very, very, very prolonged Deep Depression,
Hmm.
and that was the only thing that I looked forward to every day at 6 o'clock. So
Yeah.
I'd wolf down my food and go to my room and turn on the TV and watch it. So I don't really like thinking about those days.
Well, what I wanted to talk about with this was these first three seasons. I am about midway through season 4. The last episode that I watched was an episode called "The Wounded."
Hmm.
Um, no, it wasn't "The Wounded." It was. I watched several last night, but I can't remember exactly which one I stopped on. But it's in the middle of season 4. Um,
You were sitting there watching Star Trek: The Next Generation while I was up here in Pittsburgh watching Riff Trax Live Manos: The Hands of Fate last night.
I like
was,
that, but the
that
MST
was what I was doing.
the MST3K I think is funnier.
Is better. I've been doing a lot of Riff Tracks lately. That's how I get to watch one or two movies a day. I just put on the Riff Tracks. And...
Well, I want to tell you, the first season of Next Generation is a struggle.
It's a huge. The first season of The Next Generation is like watching the world's hardest hurdle race.
Yeah.
Where you literally would have to start your next jump as you're landing from the previous one.
Hmm.
And you're just got to hop over these things, which would be enormously difficult and would probably kill most
Hmm.
people. And that's kind of how I look at season 1 of The Next Generation.
You have to give it its due because it's 7 seasons. It had to get over an enormous hurdle.
Oh, yeah.
It had to find its footing, and the biggest thing that I noticed, the biggest positive to it, is that it is trying with all of its might to forge its own identity. One thing I noticed,
Hmm.
there's not a lot of reference. There's not a whole lot of reference to the original series. There's a few, but not, it doesn't lean on fan service.
It doesn't. It intentionally worked away from that.
Yeah.
The second episode is the only one that's a clear, distinctive reference to
James T. Kirk.
the original series.
Mhm.
No, the original series, because remember, there was one episode in the original series where something in the atmosphere and the space was causing derangement.
Mhm.
And that's the one that Sulu took off his shirt and was fencing with people, and everybody kind of seemed drunk.
And Sulu
the
was
second-
cut.
Yeah, he was.
Wow.
uh, and then the second episode of The Next Generation, they did a similar episode and cited the other episode as an incident of similar situations, and they used whatever
Are you
bones
talking
had
about the
found to
Naked Now?
counteract it. Yeah,
He mentions James D. Kirk.
yeah. They talk about it, and they said this was a problem on the first Enterprise, and like that. But that's the only time that they ever kind of recycled a plot, and as a direct. Here, look, we remember that there was another series too, and here's our version of this episode.
The one really big positive of that, there is a moment in Encounter at Farpoint. It's a 5-minute scene that I think is absolutely beautiful, and that's the scene where Data is escorting a 137-year-old Dr. McCoy.
Dr. McCoy, yep.
And he makes a reference. It's like he says, "How do you remember that? How do you remember my age so exactly?" Says, "I'm an android. I remember everything I'm exposed to." It's a funny little scene, but
it is. It's cute.
They're walking along, and he says, "The ship's got a great name. Treat her like a lady, and she'll always take you home." And they walk off together. That's the commercial break. They walk off together.
Uh-huh.
And I'm thinking, as I'm watching that, that scene did more in 5 minutes as a transference from the old generation to the new than Generations ever did in its entire running time.
Oh yeah, in all 2 hours and whatever. It's but yeah, that was a distinct and beautiful passing of the torch.
It was.
And the times that they had.
Well, and they didn't bring him back, and they didn't overplay it.
Right. They never did anything more with him. The only original series regular that came back was Nimoy on several occasions.
Right.
Two or three. There was that whole reunification. He was trying to reunify the Romulan and the Vulcan.
Unification?
Yeah.
Which is not a great episode. It's okay.
The second part is. I will say this. There are 5 words that, for me, define Star Trek The Next Generation.
What's that?
The best of both worlds.
Yes. The episode that ends season 3.
And opens season 4.
Mm-hmm.
That is the pinnacle of Star Trek.
The pinnacle of Star Trek, for me, is when it becomes unexpected, and the humanity is part of it. The idea of the Borg. When they introduce the Borg, it's great.
Oh,
that episode is called
terrifying.
That episode is called Q-Who. Is it Q-Who? No, Q-Who I think is Q-Who is that one. Deja Q is the one where he loses his Q powers. And the other Q turns up played by Corbin Burnson.
Yep.
But they
so good.
Yeah, the first one, the Q-Who, was great because it's like he flings them thousands of light years away, and they meet the Borg.
Tens of thousands,
and he's...
Because they're all the way out in the Delta Quadrant.
Yeah, and he's telling him, you're going to meet something you're not even going to believe. And
you are not prepared for this at all.
Yeah, and it's the first time that Q is actually useful.
Yeah.
Helpful. I really love that episode. That is the first great episode, and that's in the second season.
Yeah. It's hard to think of the second season producing any great episodes strictly because Pulaski's there.
Pulaski. She just never fit.
She didn't, and the actress Dana Muldaur knew that.
Yeah.
She knew. She the whole season. She when she would be asked about it later, she's like, it just didn't click.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't click. They didn't click with me. I didn't click with them. The show wasn't a good fit, and it just didn't work, and that's why I left.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly.
Well, that first season, I remember I was watching that the other night. I'm noticing the budget restraints.
Oh yeah,
And by
and
the
how
way,
much they lift over time.
and by the way, this is a show that was never made for HD.
No,
So
no.
going back to this show and watching and looking at the makeup effects, it's like you can see the lines,
Yeah,
you can see the textures on Brent Spiner's face.
yeah.
This was not made for HD.
No.
And the funny thing is, the budget restraints. It's like in the first season when they beam down to a planet, they're not beaming
Hmm.
down to a planet. They're beaming down to Stage 53 at Paramount because
Yeah.
you can see the back wall that's supposed to be the horizon.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can always the first season is very original Trek level budget
And a lot of
and
plots that
yeah,
feel very much like the original Trek.
yeah. They were trying. I mean, remember this premiered what 20 years, 25 years after
Yeah, something
20
like
years,
that.
I think,
Yeah.
close to 20 years. Uh, yeah, 20 years after the end of the original Trek,
Mm,
right? Because that went from 66 to 69,
right. And this premiered in 1987.
1987. So pretty much 20 years, 18 years to when it premiered.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got people who were there
Mm-hmm.
watching the original premiere with
Yeah.
what Jeffrey Hunter and all that. So, oh, Captain Pike, they've done a lot for him in other things
Yeah.
to round him out. they've they've been a lot more merciful to Pike than the original series.
Yeah.
was.
It,
Nice dashing Jeffrey Hunter, and then he's in a chair and can only talk with beeps.
yeah. They did a great parody of that on Family Guy, or not Family Guy,
Yeah,
on
they did.
Futurama.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
like Leela tries to answer the question. Would the witness please answer the question in the beeps?
Right, because that was how they testified, and they got into the chair and would beep. Yeah.
But no, you could see the seeds of a great series in season one happening. It's just got to get through a lot of terrible stuff. The uniforms with those dustbuster, um, those dustbuster phasers.
The type ones were just terrible.
Yeah.
And the original uniforms, I hated. They didn't have a collar. Apparently, they were spandex, and they didn't always get washed,
Mhm.
and so they would retain a whole lot of stink. And so by the end of the week that they were filming, everybody smelled bad. They were uncomfortable. None of them fit right. They were screwing up Stewart's back. That's why they switched in season 3 to the different uniforms.
The cloth
because
uniforms,
he,
yeah.
He bitched so much, the wool ones, yeah, he bitched so much because his back was killing him and that they were just uncomfortable, that they changed them. And those never fit right either because he was always yanking down the shirt.
Yeah, and that became a thing.
It did.
And Brent Spiner, and Brent Spiner, I think Brent Spiner got a pay raise between season 1 and season 2 because he put on some weight.
You know, I think we
He's
talked
really
about
skinny
this
in
when
the
we
first episode. He's a starving artist.
I think we talked about this when we did Nemesis. Like I said he decided that Data had to die because he could no longer look like his parameters were not changing. He was too old to not be changing anymore.
Right.
He was
Right.
You could see how much weight he had put on in between Insurrection and Nemesis, and he was starting to get a little bit of a chin fold, and it's like, dude, androids don't get fat. We need to cut this out.
What was really funny is when I think it was between season 2 and season 3 when the major cast members got pay raises, and Jonathan Frakes started putting on weight. So you can see him in the cast photos standing behind everybody. And he got the beard, so he no longer looked like Mike Brady.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah, that beard, the beard was the best thing for him.
yeah,
And then he got rid of it in Insurrection, and I'm like, yeah.
I'm gonna say this, I love this show. I love this
Oh,
show.
yeah.
I
Yeah, yeah.
do. I absolutely love this show. It's a little dated, and as a
Yeah.
30-year-old show would be, it's a little dated. The acting is and a lot of this I think comes from. Now this is I'm talking about the first two seasons. A lot of this comes from the writing, but they try sometimes these tender moments that feel a little
See,
forced.
Patrick Stewart uh, was probably the best person they could have cast for this
Yes.
because anytime he speaks, it lends gravity to anything that's being
Hmm.
said. No matter how stupid or how poorly written, it sounds magnificent coming out of his mouth.
That Stentorian
That's why even
dialogue.
even his conspiracy theory role is good because he outacted the entire movie just by being him. Uh,
He has
so
three types of voices to me. The accent that he had when the show started, which was very, very British. And then the more, when he spent more time, I guess spent more time in America, and it wasn't quite as, of course, his accent wasn't quite as stagey or what have you. There's some inflections in his accent that smooth out as the show goes
mhm.
along.
Well, he's finding the character.
And then there's the Seth MacFarlane Patrick Stewart. The ones he does for the voices for American Dad, the Bullock.
Yes,
There's
yes.
then there's that Patrick Stewart.
Bullock, and he's the voice of Susie, Joe's little girl.
Yeah,
He was the interior monologue of Susie.
right.
Yeah, the little baby.
But yeah, He's in a lot of ways the linchpin that really
Oh
got
yeah.
the show through those first two seasons.
Apparently, him being on set and being the regal, you know, classically trained actor that he was, apparently everybody stepped up their game
Hmm.
as a result of just him being there.
Right.
And you would think that it would be like this really serious atmosphere,
Hmm.
but they were all practical jokers, and it was just like a laugh riot, apparently, the entire time they were there.
Well, it's
And then Michael.
something that Andy Griffith said. He said the star dictates the mood of the show, or the mood
Mhm.
of the set, and it goes out to the other actors.
Right.
And this is certainly a case of that.
Right. They were all having fun, but they were all very dedicated.
Yeah.
Now, when Michael Dorn went to DS9 to continue on being Worf,
And
the
he's in
set
more
was
Star Trek episodes than any other character.
any other character. Uh, he discovered that the DS9 set was not anything
Mm-mm.
like the TNG set because Avery Brooks did not stand for tomfoolery. He was there to do a serious job. He did it, and nobody fucked around.
I think that's what a lot of people didn't like about DS9 is that the early on the plots were very serious.
Yes.
There wasn't that lightness of tone. Um, the thing
It
is,
wasn't until Dr. Bashir and O'Brien became good friends that a lot of things started to lighten up on the
speaking
show.
of which, let's talk about O'Brien because
Miles O'Brien.
Miles O'Brien, he started as the transporter chief with no dialogue.
No.
And now I'm in season 4 and I just watched his wedding.
Yeah.
But he evolved very quickly. They gave him a name very very quickly.
He did. It was funny because for a while he was Transporter Room 2
Hmm.
tech,
Right.
right? So that was how he was referred to in the script.
Hmm.
So he gets this script, and there's all these lines for this O'Brien in Transporter Room 2, and he goes, wait, did I get moved? And they go, no, you got a name. And he goes, oh.
Oh,
Like, oh, I'm actually part of this now. Okay.
because they put his name in the credits when they use him,
Uh-huh.
not
Uh-huh.
the opening credits, the interstitial credits on the episode.
Mm-hmm.
They did the same thing with Diana Muldaur and Whoopi Goldberg. They were never. They were all. Those two were always listed as guest starring, or also appearing.
Right. Because Whoopi was not a regular cast member,
Mm.
and I think that they wanted to keep the position of Doctor open, so they didn't put anybody into the opening credits, so they didn't have to change them.
Mm.
Did you ever notice that opening credits are like the slowest to change?
And you know what? They're the reason I love Netflix so much. The Netflix function of skip intro. I do. I love that. It's like that you see
My
the thing.
my son loves that too. I will tend to. I like having the theme song
Mhm.
just because.
It's part of it.
Well, and because most shows now don't have a theme or
Now,
an opening
Discovery
credit
does.
sequence. Discovery does. Discovery's the first one that I've seen, like, ever since Lost just had
Yeah.
and Lost, and that's it, and
Yeah.
then the credits were over the story.
No, Seinfeld.
They're
Seinfeld never had credits. Seinfeld just said the title and you went right into the show.
yeah, that's true too. But it had a theme that you could know.
But it went all
Had
through
that
the show.
ba-dum, 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 bum. Yeah, but Lost didn't really have a theme or an opening credits or anything like that.
Mm. It's either cut out completely or it's about 5 seconds long.
Yeah.
Like
So,
on Will and Grace. They'll do
Yeah.
the title and you'll see the cast and that's it.
Mm.
But this one, that opening credit sequence goes on for 3-4 minutes,
Hmm.
and it's
And it uses the Star Trek march that Jerry Goldsmith wrote for Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
and it's not exactly the same. It's a little bit different.
Not much different though.
It's not by much, but you can tell there's a difference between the two.
Yeah, there's a little bit more bombast for the next generation.
Well, I gotta tell you, out of season 1, the worst episode out of season 1 is called Skin of Evil.
Oh, is that the one that Tasha Yar dies?
That's the one where
Yeah.
Tasha Yar dies. That
That is
episode
so
is
bad.
horrible. Oh my
It's
god.
so bad, and it's even worse when you know why they killed her.
Yeah. Yeah. They threw
Which, for
away
anybody
the
who
character.
doesn't know, they threw away the character and fired Denise Crosby because she did a Playboy spread.
Oh, that's not what I heard. I heard she left because there was a lot of sexism going on and she felt like she wasn't being allowed to act. That's what I had heard.
Maybe that was what she said,
Mhm.
but the real she was not in their eyes upholding the brand.
Maybe that's
by
what she was
appearing-
talking about.
by appearing nude in Playboy. It probably is. Like, oh no, you can't do that, and it's like, well, it's my body. I can do that. It's my career. I can do that. That is my right.
Yeah.
And nothing in the contract says that I can't do certain things, and so she did it, and then they killed her.
Wow. See, that's interesting. I'd heard also
But
said
then she comes back.
she does, but the episode is so terrible because it's indicative of one of those things that happens where they have 20 minutes worth of plot that they have to stretch out to 45 minutes. So basically the point of the episode keeps getting repeated over and over and over again.
Oh, Skin of Evil? Oh yeah.
They have to get the people out of the downed shuttle, but this thing is in front of them and this thing keeps screwing with them, and it just keeps happening over and over and over again, and it gets
Mhm.
frustrating.
Mhm.
But the most frustrating thing happens at the end because she has to say goodbye to every single member of the freaking
Yeah.
cast. Oh my God, it's agonizing.
It is agonizing. Although I do like how they brought her back a few times.
That was a great
Denise
episode
Crosby,
in season 3. It was called Yesterday's Enterprise.
Yesterday's Enterprise, and it's an alternate reality
Mm-hmm.
where they're at war with the Klingons, and she
Mm-hmm.
didn't die,
Mm-hmm.
but she goes back so that with the Enterprise C, so that she does die.
Mm-hmm.
She sacrifices herself. It's a more noble end. But then Denise Crosby comes back a few years later,
Which I haven't gotten to.
because Tasha doesn't die
Mm-hmm.
in the Romulan attack.
Right.
Is kidnapped and is either cloned or has a child
I think she has a child.
with a Romulan, probably through rape, but they don't really say that. And so then her child becomes this real thorn in the side for for a little while in, I think, somewhere around season 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
She gets to be a real problem. She comes back 2 or 3 times before I think they end up killing her, or so, I don't remember exactly what happens to her, but
Yeah, I saw Yesterday's Enterprise. I think
that is
that
such
may
a great
be I think
episode.
that may be the
Oh.
episode where the show really starts to ramp up.
that's
Because
the turn.
I
That's
really
the
liked
one of the turns.
that and the Borg episode, the first Borg episode.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked season 2 a lot better because of two things. One is Guinan,
Mm-hmm.
and the other is Counselor Troy, who they finally got rid of that stupid bun, that hair bun.
Do you know?
She
I-
looked physically uncomfortable.
She did. My problem with Deanna Troi has always been nothing about her character. I love her character,
Mhm.
and Mariana Sirtis is a wonderful actress. I hated that little unitard they had her in.
It was kind of humiliating.
It was. And then finally, by season 7, she's full time wearing her uniform. I'm like, now I understand why people why people fantasize about her.
Right.
Until then, that was a very unflattering bodysuit,
Yeah.
and did not relay any of her actual beauty.
Mhm.
And I was mystified by people who had a big crush on her, and I'm like, I don't get it.
Mhm.
And then when I see her in her uniform and her hair pulled back in a ponytail, not frizzed out and not tied into a schoolmarm bun, she's quite pretty.
Yeah.
It's
That-
like,
but that-
why were they doing that to her for 6 years?
That first season, when they pull that hair back into that
Oh.
weird, and as soon as and the first season, the first episode, of the
And
second
she always
season,
had that weird scarf sash around her waist.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
that first season, that's the first episode of that second season, and it's gone. And I'm like, and she looks and acts so much more relaxed because that's the episode. I think that's the episode where she has a baby.
Oh, that one was so weird.
Yeah, it's
Like,
like an
she-
alien
she-
parasite.
The baby gestates in like 3 days or something,
Yeah.
and it goes through like a full life cycle in a week.
Mhm. Well, in 45 minutes.
45. Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah. Wow. I think the time on ship was about a week.
You know, your kids grow up
Um,
so fast. You know.
Yeah, yeah, they do.
That's a convenient sci-fi device. When an alien baby is born, it'll age to like age 9 in about 20 minutes. So,
Yeah. I think we can wrap up this mini here with this. I
but I
love
do want
talking
to
about
mention
Trek, and
before we go, I want to mention Best of Both Worlds because that episode is
That is-
unbelievable.
that's a game changer.
I didn't remember
is-
how good that was.
Oh, it's so good. And you know what? I think is equally good. Is season 4, episode 2,
Family, which is really good.
When Picard goes back to France and he bonds with his brother and he contemplates leaving Starfleet. That is a dynamite 44 minutes of show.
Although I will have to mention the Picard has been through absolutely the worst horror of his entire life.
He's been through the worst horror of many people's lives.
Of many people's lives. Do you really think going to see his brother was probably the next logical step?
Whom he does not get along with.
Who he does not, because he does not get along with him.
Like,
it's like, haven't you been through enough?
Yeah. But by the same token, I think he just felt that family was what he needed.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
in the end, it was very healing for him.
Yeah. And it's a good episode. He has a really good moment because he has a breakdown. And I love
when they fight in the vineyard.
And they're laughing, and then all of a sudden it lands on him, and it's like somebody who's been through like this enormous car crash or this enormous tragedy, this accident.
Just starts sobbing,
and it just lands on him, and
he finally breaks.
He finally breaks. Yeah. We're going to talk when I get through this. We're going to talk about season 4 because season 4 is turning out to be really, really good.
Season 4 is season 3 was the turning point where things started to really gain steam.
Mm-hmm.
Seasons 4, 5, and 6 are the crown jewels.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that when we get there. Season
7 has some good moments, and the final episode is amazing. Mm-hmm. But it also has some of the weakest episodes since the first season.
The last episode of this series is the best bookend I've ever seen in my life.
Oh yeah. Best of Both Worlds is remarkable.
No, I'm talking about when we get to the end, I'm talking about All Good Things. It's the best bookend I've ever seen to a series.
That's what I meant. All Good Things. Yeah, it's a magnificent episode. But yeah, so we'll talk more about Trek as you go through and rediscover a lot more of it. You watching that made me want to go back and rewatch DS9.
Mm-hmm.
And the other day I walked into the house and my wife was watching it while she was baking. She was doing something. I think she was baking. And she had it on, and I'm like, oh, now I just want to watch this.
I just really hope that Netflix doesn't yoink the series.
They're also on Hulu and Amazon, I think.
Okay.
So they're readily available.
And I can always get them mailed, but it's so much more convenient to just sit down and and go through.
Well, yeah, you can really lose time.
Yeah.
With that.
All right, number 1, take us home.
That wraps us up here. We thank you very much for joining us. You can find all of our episodes at podbaydorspodcast.wordpress.com. You can find us on iTunes and on YouTube. Head over to Twitter and follow us there at pod_bay, and throw a tip into our virtual tip jar on Patreon at pod_bay. That's everything we have, and the pod bay doors are now closed.
The mission has been completed.